What I learned from a child who couldn't hear a single sound taught me Buddha's language without needing any words at all. This is that story. My name is Dr. Sarah Williams. For 35 years, I dedicated my life to studying sound meditation and the healing power of Buddhist mantras. I wrote 14 best-selling books on sound therapy, became the world's leading expert on Buddhist audio healing, taught at prestigious universities, and had millions of followers who believed in the transformative power of sacred sounds. But at 58, everything changed in an instant. A devastating car accident left me completely deaf. The world of sound that had been my sanctuary, my profession, my entire spiritual practice, vanished into permanent silence. My career crumbled overnight. How could a sound therapy expert who couldn't hear continue her work? My marriage fell apart because my husband couldn't handle communicating through sign language. I fell into the deepest depression of my life, feeling like Buddha himself had abandoned me. How could I practice Buddhism without hearing the sacred chants, the mantras, the temple bells? I thought I had lost all connection to the spiritual world. For an entire year, I lived in this prison of silence, isolated and hopeless. I couldn't understand how someone who had spent decades teaching others about Buddha's voice through sound could continue when that voice was forever silenced for me. 1 year after the accident, in my darkest moment, when I was preparing to end my life, I decided to visit the special school for deaf children one last time to say goodbye to a world I thought I could no longer be part of. That's where I met Emma. She was 7 years old, born completely deaf, and when she saw me crying in the school garden, she ran over with the biggest smile I'd ever seen. Emma began talking to me in sign language, and even though I didn't understand, she patiently taught me each gesture. When Emma placed her hand on her heart, then pointed to the sky, then placed her hand on my heart, I understood what she was saying. Buddha lives in your heart. You don't need ears to hear him. Then Emma did something extraordinary. She took my hand and led me to the school's meditation garden. Without any words or sounds, she sat in perfect lotus position and began to meditate in complete silence. For the first time in a year, I felt peace wash over me. This little girl, who had never heard a single sound, was more connected to Buddha's presence than anyone I had ever met in my 35 years of practice. She was teaching me that Buddha doesn't speak through sound. He speaks through love, through presence, through energy that transcends all physical senses.
In that moment of perfect silence, I realized I had been searching for Buddha through my ears for 35 years, but Buddha had always been in my heart. This deaf child had found Buddha's true voice naturally, without ever needing to hear a single mantra or temple bell. Emma showed me that hearing loss wasn't a disability. It was a special gift that allowed deeper connection to the spiritual world. In silence, I could finally hear Buddha's real message. I didn't need my hearing restored to reclaim my life. Instead, I founded the Silent Buddha Academy with Emma as my youngest co-founder in history. We created a revolutionary meditation system using vibrations, colored lights, and heart-centered emotions instead of sound. We developed techniques where people could hear with their hearts, learning to feel Buddha's presence through touch, sight, and intuitive connection. Emma taught our classes, showing hearing people how to access the spiritual realm that deaf individuals naturally inhabit. 3 years later, our academy has branches in 40 countries with over 10,000 students worldwide. Hearing people come to learn the language of the heart from our deaf community. NASA invited us to research nonverbal communication for astronauts. Emma, now 10 years old, became the youngest TED Talk speaker in history, presenting on Buddha Nature Beyond All Senses.
Our students discovered that some of life's most profound spiritual truths can only be accessed in complete silence. The hearing world was actually missing an entire dimension of Buddhist practice that the deaf community had mastered naturally. I learned that Buddha doesn't need to be heard. He needs to be felt. That deafness isn't a limitation, but a doorway to deeper spiritual connection. That the most important conversations happen without words, in the sacred space of silent hearts connecting with infinite love. Emma taught me that Buddha's greatest teachings aren't heard with ears, but felt with souls. In a world obsessed with noise, sometimes the most profound wisdom comes from those who live in silence. If you are struggling right now, if you feel disconnected from your spiritual path, if you think you've lost your way, remember this: Buddha's voice isn't in the sounds around you. It's in the silence within you, where love speaks louder than any words ever could. Take a moment right now. Close your eyes. Place your hand on your heart. In that silence, feel Buddha's presence. That's where your healing begins. That's where your true spiritual journey starts. That's where you discover that love needs no sound to transform everything. Emma changed my life by showing me that the deepest spiritual connections happen in perfect silence, where hearts speak directly to hearts, and where Buddha's love flows freely without needing any words at all. If this message touched your soul, share it with someone who needs to know that they're heard even in their silence. Subscribe to learn more ways to connect with Buddha through the language of the heart. And remember, in a world full of noise, Buddha's most powerful voice is the one that speaks in perfect silence. May Buddha's silent wisdom guide you. May Buddha's felt presence heal you. May Buddha's heartfelt love transform you. Gete gete para samgete bodhi swaha. Comment here if you're ready to listen to Buddha with your heart instead of your ears. Share this story with someone who needs to know that they're heard even in their silence. Subscribe to learn more ways to connect with Buddha through the language of the heart.